All right, good Monday, everybody. So I got the car all cleaned up. I went ahead and uh, engine degreased underneath it and in the suspension and everything like that. Cleaned the engine the other day, so it was pretty good. But I also went ahead and did all of our porches and everything, so that took a while. So a little wore out from that. But so I'm gonna run over the whole car, front to back. I'll probably gonna forget some stuff, but I'll try and do the best I can with everything that I've got done to the car and what's custom on the car and everything. So, all right. So the engine is an LS2 aluminum block, 243 head. It's a Patrick G cam. It has Summit forged pistons, total seal, non-gapless rings because I went through gapless rings on it and that was a terrible experience. I had to change them out because it burned through so much oil. It's got trunnion upgrade on it, MSD coils, mid-length headers because they give me a little better ground clearance. Just a Dorman LS2 intake manifold, stock LS2 throttle body. Let's see what else on the engine. That's about it on the engine. It's balanced, ARP hardware in it. It's got Mighty Mouse Solutions catch can system, which is very nice. I think does a very good job keeping the intake clean. Also, everything is turn one on the steering, the pump, the pulley. Also, the steering gear is also turn one. That stuff works good. Had everything, had the pump revalved because it was valved a little too low. So the only other thing I need to do there is do a cooler on it. I think that's going to help the overflowing issue on it. The intake is a little cobbled together. I used to have a ram air intake, but when I hit the deer, I lost the intake and didn't really feel like remaking another one. I don't really feel like there was much of a gain for it, and it was kind of heavy. So temporarily, it's got this old exhaust tubing set up on it with the dual filters and everything, which I don't see any restriction in the engine at all on that. So we're gonna keep going with that for now until I can do it all aluminum setup because that tubing is pretty heavy. We have upgraded to the mini air compressor, which works really good on it. It's got ATI damper on it. I forgot about that. It also has a flow cooler water pump, which has the impeller, has the backing plate on it to help the flow on that. And then it's my own custom made strut brace, definitely overbuilt. I'd like to make that out of aluminum one day once I can actually weld aluminum. It is a Be Cool aluminum radiator, and it is Spall twin 11-inch fans on it. Regular GM ECU, T-spec fuses and fuse block. I kind of got those because I kind of like the look of them. They're very low key. Had a couple issues with things coming loose on them, but I think so with the Loctite, I think I've got that resolved. It is not running mass airflow. It is running speed density on it. I was told by the tuner, a PCM in North Carolina, that would be a little simpler on it and give me a little more power. Not that it really needs that. It's definitely does fine on that. The entire wiring harness is all custom loomed and lengthened and shortened. Every wire I've had to lengthen and shorten in some way because I didn't want to put the computer where the wiring harness out of the truck would let me put it. So I put it where I wanted it and then extended all the wires wherever I wanted them. I used to have the throttle TAC controller inside the engine compartment, but I decided to move it inside, trying to transfer some weight. Eventually the computer, which is down there in this also this custom little mount that holds it down with all the wiring and everything, I'll put that back near the battery with most of the other wiring and everything, also to save weight and keep it out of the weather. They are UMI strut mounts on it. And obviously we know about the Willwood 1.1" master cylinder. That's a standard 3rd gen booster, because with the extra ports on the Willwood, it would put the ports in a bad spot with the strut braces, which is another reason why I was going with the manual brakes, is to get it away from the strut towers, so I got more room. That is a Willwood reservoir for the clutch, a little more capacity. I think it looks a little bit better than the original one. This is all my wiring, like little fuse box and everything. So I still need to do a little bit of work on this. These right here are all ground blocks. This one's broken, I need to replace that so I can put the cover back on it. Those are all ground for the fans, and then the fan relays are underneath them. These are for a combination of fan and like computer power and different things like that. It has a Brave Tech headlight controller, thank goodness, because another reason why I had originally gone away from the flip-up lights before I hit the deer was the headlights were just a nightmare. They just never went up and down when I wanted to, and they're very inconsistent. And now they go up and down every single time. They're very consistent, no issue there. I think that's going to work good for a long time. Move around to the front. Also, you notice I got this cutout in here for the radiator, for the air intake. The only way I was able to do that was I actually lowered the radiator by modifying the lower mount so that it could go lower, and then made this upper radiator support for it so that I could tuck the air intake down lower, because I never liked it running across the front of the engine for the heat and everything, and having the filter like on the side here or on the other side. I never really was a fan of that. So now it gets all the cold air it can handle in the front. And I got the heat protector here. I think that's DEI. It's a little tore up. I have to replace that on it. It's been through some stuff, obviously, with the accident and stuff. The front end is all custom fiberglass nose, and I can't remember the name of the company, but it's a Canadian company that I found online that makes that. They made it very quickly for me when I hit the deer. It does need to be modified a lot to fit, but it's the only place I can find that makes one of these type noses. That basically, these cars normally this rises up from the back to the front, and I never really liked that look, so this levels the whole thing out. And then it also allows me to have the air ducting in the front. So this is the duct that runs straight to the radiator. Underneath, inside, you kind of see some tubing underneath. The entire support underneath is all tubular, including the bumper, which is the crash bar, which is right behind here. All that is handmade to make room for the ducting, and also to connect to the splitter. The splitter is hard mounted to the car. It is removable. It has screws underneath it. You can kind of see it there. They're flush screws for it. The crash bar did very good against the deer. None of that got damaged at all on that. The hood from the same company. It's the Ram Air 1 hood. This one's not as good as the last one I had, but it'll do the job. It needs a little bit more work than the previous one. Track spec louvers. I did not make my own this time. This is just an easier option. I think they look pretty clean. I added the extra ones on the outside. I would prefer this line to be consistent all the way through, but it kind of is what it is. I was trying to keep the same volume on it. So that's basically most of the front end. yeah, I think that's about it. Obviously, you don't see the battery. We'll get to the battery later. It's been relocated for weight distribution to help the balance of the car. So move down to suspension. It's got the Wilwood 4-piston, 1.75-inch piston calipers on it, yellow stuff pads. This is a custom brake setup that I got from someone else on thirdgen.org, and so they don't, unfortunately they don't make any of this anymore, this setup. So if I ever wanted to change to bigger brakes, I'd have to get the Wilwood set, which is fine. But this one's pretty light. This is all, the backing plate is all aluminum, and the hub is aluminum. Obviously you got the cutouts for the rotor and stuff like that. Let's see, Viking double adjustable struts on it. Had those rebuilt as well this off season because this one on this side was leaking out of the top. Got some Eibach bump stops, which I need to extend those a little bit because surprisingly they're not actually long enough to reach when the car drops down. Obviously braided lines. Those are Landrum 1,150-pound front springs. A little heavy according to the math, but the car is turning so well right now, I don't think I'm going to worry about changing them because it might make it even looser than it is. Got all the adjustable end links. You can see the sway bar link, which is, you know, custom bent. It's a splined sway bar with pillow block bearings, which are greasable. That's 1.5 inch solid sway bar. It's the biggest one they make for it. This car needs a lot of sway bar, so it definitely likes that. Ball joints, those are adjustable 1-inch extended ball joints. I mean by adjustable is the tension on them can be adjusted separately, so as they wear you can adjust them, or if you want a certain amount of tension on it you can do that. The spindles also came with the brakes. They are custom modified. The steering arm is a little shorter than the stock one, so it kind of helps some of the Ackerman steering. So basically Ackerman, the inside wheel is supposed to turn more than the outside wheel when you turn it, because if you turn in the circle, the inside has to turn a tighter radius. So this car had anti-Ackerman, which means from the factory the outside wheel would turn in more than the inside wheel, which makes these cars corner terribly. So this made a huge difference. It makes the steering a little quicker on it. So there is that. It's not 100% Ackerman, but it's pretty close. These are my custom lower control arms. They're actually modified BMR units. The entire front part of the arm is all BMR. All I did was cut the end of it off and put the roto joint on it, and that actually extended it the 2 inches that I needed it. The rear part of the arm is just about all custom because of the scrub radius is basically down to about 1/2 inch to 1 inch positive, and because of that the back side of the wheel turns in more than it did before. So it was, when this was coming out straighter, it was hitting it, and it was turning radius was terrible. So I had to have a custom piece made for this, and I had to plug weld it in there so it gave room for the tire. And then there's a steering stop that I had to make for it. It hits the original steering stop on it. These are weight jacks, which you can see a little bit in there. See the weight jack is adjustable. It's got weight jacks on all 4 corners on it. These are UMI subframe connectors, and then I added some of the stitch welding around the perimeter to make them stiffer, which actually made a difference. It definitely made it better on there. It's got a Hawks clearance cross member for the T56 6-speed that's in it. Got all my own custom exhausts. I don't love it too loud, so that's actually an extra glass pack or resonator. I call it a resonator, it's more like a glass pack on it. The rear brakes are standard LS1 out of like a 98 to 2002 car. Those are Coleman Racing aluminum rear control arms with a roto joint on one end and rod end on the other end. Make them very lightweight. The end links, obviously poly on one end and then rod end on the other end, so I can adjust them after doing corner balance and everything. Obviously Viking double adjustables. They used to be coilovers, but I didn't love the coilover setup on this thing, so I switched to the weight jack. As you can see there, it's got the weight jack in it. It goes welded to the axle, and it's got a lightweight cup that goes on. I had to add these on the outside of it because they're loose in there when it's down, so it kind of keeps the spring supported in there better. I do have to run spacers on it, unfortunately, for now, because this is a 3rd gen rear end with 4th gen wheels. And that's another point. It has 4th gen rear wheels, 18 by 10.5 all the way around. And because of the extended front control arms, it does not need any spacers on the front because of the scrub radius is like perfect in the rear. This is my own custom right-hand side, body side panhard bar bracket that I stuck in there. So that it's also a UMI panhard bar, and it is chromoly. I had an aluminum one and it ended up getting bent a little bit, so I didn't like the flex that it had. Moving along, it's obviously it's a 3rd gen 10 bolt. It has a true track differential and upgraded axles. Obviously it's got my own C-clips in it and modified the center piece to help the axle end play on it. It's a UMI axle side adjustable bracket with the brace and everything on it. You can kind of see the weight jacks a little bit from this angle. You can also see it's also a UMI standard adjustable torque arm. It is hooked to the transmission. It's not hooked to the cross member. It's just the other side. Some more body stuff. These side ground effects are, this car is a 92, but it's actually got like 86 to 90 body work on it. And these are also custom ground effects that I got from that same company that made the nose. So these do not have the swoop, the upside down swoop. It looks like a sad face to me. I never liked the look of that. So these ones are perfectly straight front to back, so it kind of changes the look of the side of the car. I think it makes it look a little bit better when it's straight and not swooped down. Kind of goes with the body lines a little bit better. So that's kind of custom. It's got the flush door handles on it. I cannot remember the name of the guy that makes the door handles, but he's very popular with those flush door handles. Corbeau FX1 Pro seats. Seats are extremely uncomfortable from Corbeau, so it actually has a custom foam seat insert in it that actually has this is actually memory foam on the bottom. I put the memory foam in there to sit on and then put that inside the bag to do the expanding foam. So this is actually hard material, but because it's conformed to my body, it's actually reasonably comfortable for me to drive. So I need to do Belinda's side at some point. It also has the memory foam on the bottom. It is a 4th gen center console with the relocated window switches with slightly different switches in it. Got the nice white shifter knob. Grant steering wheel that's been on there forever. AEM wideband 02, and you can see the green, that's where my OBD2 port is, so it's more accessible when I do data logging. I can connect straight to it there. It's easier to do. And then there is the battery. So it has been relocated to the right rear. Inside the car, it is sealed. It is an Optima battery, so there is no acid to deal with as far as liquid acid and everything on it. I need to do a little more work with the wiring on it. I might eventually change it to a plastic box, but initially I'd done this, but might change it to a plastic one eventually. Some people are not too thrilled about the aluminum box with a battery in it and stuff, but so far it's been working pretty good. It did transfer quite a bit of weight. That's a lot of weight moving to the right rear, and it's inside the wheels. You want most of your weight to be inside the wheels, not outside the wheels, as far as like beyond, up to the nose and down back to the rear, beyond the rear axle, because that helps it handle better. So I moved my throttle controller behind the dash pad on the right side where it says Trans Am. It's actually behind there. That was one of the weight transfer things, and then, like I said, eventually I'll move the computer all the way to the back near the battery to also transfer more weight from the front of the car, trying to make the front as light as possible, because obviously these things are nose heavy. So, got your clutch pedals. It is drive-by-wire, so that pedal is actually out of a truck, and it's been heavily modified to fit for me. That is actually on the left side with the grate. That is actually a oval exhaust tube that I have welded into the floorboard, because the original dead pedal sits really far forward, and this puts my foot a little more in the same position as the rest of the pedals, and it's a little closer to the clutch, and to be able to move it over, it's just more comfortable to drive, because my legs are in basically the same position in, you know, left and right side, so it's just a little more comfortable. Trying to think of anything else. I did conform the splitter to the tires this time, so when you turn the tires in, it just clears the splitter. There is a gap in the middle, you can see. I have an extra extension piece for the splitter, but I haven't put it in just yet. So eventually I'll put that in there, and that'll completely enclose that splitter all the way up to the K-member on the car. Oh yeah, I forgot it has you can see that aluminum bracket that's mounted to the center link. That has relocated the inner tie rods further outboard, so they're more in line with where the control arm is, instead of being inboard of the control arm. That helps with the bump steer. I mean, it obviously has bump steer adjustability on the outside, but this allows me to get the length of the tie rod just about perfect, to where there is almost no compromise to the bump steer on it. It's practically zero bump steer, which made a huge difference in how it rides and everything. So there's another shot of the mono balls for the sway bar. I'll climb up there. So I did have to make my own brackets for this sway bar, because it's so different from the factory. So it's kind of a mixture of some UMI parts and my own custom parts to get that thing bolted in there, because of where it's positioned at, and the length of the bar is different. So it also has sway bar end locks, so the sway bar doesn't move side to side, and it is also a big help. There's a good shot from underneath. toying with the idea of doing a true dual exhaust, doing my own version of it, using two 2.5 inch pipes that go over the rear axle and putting them side by side with the next pipe, and then 2 mufflers in the back, but that'll come down the road. I'm not too worried about that right now. You see the ATI damper under there. Yeah, when I hit that deer, all this was bent. This whole section was all bent back, so I had to pull all this out. So that's why certain things don't look as clean as they did after I painted it, because I had to literally pull all this out with the truck. There's a ratchet strap and everything to get that back straight again, and then obviously replace the right front fender, because somehow the deer came around and hit this part of the fender when it hit the car. Obviously it obliterated the nose and most of the hood. The door made it, but the right rear fender, this is actually banged out a little bit. It looks better in the video, I think, than it is in person. So eventually I'm going to cut this whole fender out, probably from somewhere in this vicinity all the way up and around underneath where it ties in underneath the side spoiler, and then I'll cut it probably somewhere back in here, because this is all still good and I can access this on the backside. So I have that fender in the Connex, so eventually I'll cut that out and put that in. The bumper did bounce back out pretty good. It's not really, it's got some cracking on the paint and everything, but I think I can just clean that up and fix that up. Be good to go. That is a Flowmaster muffler. It's a straight through, sort of a straight through. It's got a cone inside of it. A lot of people like how it sounds, but when I do that true dual, I'll probably have 2 of those. I was gonna switch to a different muffler. It's supposed to have less drone, but people like how this one sounds, and I do like how it sounds. So I'll probably just run 2 of these on it. Still do the 3-inch ones. I think it looks better than 2.5 exhaust. So I'll have to do an adapter when I do the duals, so I'll have one on the other side as well. Not much going on in the trunk. The trunk isn't really finished at all. I did have to, when I got rear-ended, the trunk lid wouldn't close, so I had to pull the inner section out to line that all back up again. Obviously I had to replace the crash bar underneath, and then this whole side of the car was sitting, I don't know, probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch lower than the other side, because it basically crumpled this side in a little bit. So in order to straighten that, I basically attached this front suspension point to a hard point in my concrete in my garage, and then put a jack where the muffler is a little bit. There's a frame right there under that, and basically jacked the car up from that point until when I measured side to side, this side was just about as even with that side. It's still a little bit off, but I don't know how straight this car was originally, because these cars are notoriously known for the bodies not really being straight. I can tell that when I do my alignments and everything, that some of the body stuff isn't straight, but the wheels are straight to each other. So it was a white and gold car. I did switch to a black top. I think it looks better with the black wheels. Eventually I'm going to do all this in black. I think that's going to look better with the black top. Obviously the hood will be white again on it. So when I extended the control arms the 2 inches to help with the scrub radius, I had to move the strut inboard, because if I hadn't, the strut would still be in the same spot that it was previously, and then it would make it so I couldn't run that offset wheel, so it wouldn't really have changed the scrub radius. So the strut is now mounted on the inside with a block. These are grade 8 bolts, and they are shanked just about all the way through, so they're about as strong as they'll be. So those things are not going anywhere. These are friction lock nuts on it. So yeah, the scrub radius is basically the pivot point that you steer the car on, where the pivot point meets the center of the tire, or somewhere along the horizontal part of the tire. So usually on these cars, it's that pivot point is way inboard, which causes a lot of scrub, which makes the wheels wants to pull the steering wheel out of your hand a lot of times. It causes some handling problems. So this car, it's practically in the center. You want a little bit of positive usually, but it made a huge difference on how it drives. Like with this car, handling wise, right now, like I can't get it to push. Like can't push the front hard enough right now to make it push. It's just trying to get the back end to catch up with the front end right now, because the front is so tight. So I'm always trying to figure out how I can make the rear tighter than the front. So I only run a 19mm rear bar, and then my upper poly mounts in the rear are not really very tight, to kind of help the bar move a little bit more, to kind of give a little more rear grip. There's actually some people that run no rear bar with a lot heavier spring. So I've kind of contemplated that kind of setup as well. Oh, I just remembered something. They are fuel injector clinic injectors. These are 39 pound, I believe is what they were, if I remember right. It does have a lot of braided stuff on it, but I don't like flashy. So just about all the braided stuff, or yes, all the braided stuff I should say, is black to kind of help blend in. So all the water, all the fuel, eventually all my power steering, all that stuff will be black. Obviously the Mighty Mouse stuff is all black. So here's some of my water stuff. It's all black to kind of blend in, because I kind of like to be clean, kind of look sort of OE-ish, if that's a thing. So trying to keep it from being too flashy, because it's already pretty aggressive on the outside, but the white kind of tones it down a little bit. So I kind of like that kind of looks. Kind of like the tone down of the white, the clean of the white. So trying to think of anything else. I think that's about it on the outside, or over the whole car. I'll walk around and see if there's anything else I can't remember. Oh, these side ground effects on the doors do not fit very well, so I've got something I'm going to try with some inserts and some adhesive, two-part adhesive on that, to try and get those to fit a little bit better. And eventually I'll work on having the big spoiler on the back of it, but using the mounts that are already underneath here, so I can get that advantage of that spoiler on the back, which I'm not really taking advantage of right now. It does have an Aeromotive fuel pump in it, and their sending unit inside the fuel tank, which is really nice. So there's no adapters, it's just straight AN line front to back. So oh, there's one little thing I just noticed. So you'll see that orange line underneath the car, that is the fuel line. It used to route on the inside of the frame rail, but obviously you can see the exhaust runs on the inside of the frame rail. So I ran it outside the frame rail and then through a hole to kind of keep it as far away as possible. My brake line still runs on the inside, but I have it covered. So I'll probably make a shield. Hooker makes a shield to cover all that up. You gotta buy their exhaust to get it, so I might have to kind of do my own kind of thing on that to kind of help shield some of that a little bit more. It's all V-banded, male, female on the exhaust to make it easier to put it together. Yeah, the rear springs, I didn't talk about those. Those are Landrum as well, and they are 325 rears is what I run, and then the 1150s on the front. Seem to be working pretty good right now. Like I said, I might eventually try a no rear bar setup and run a super heavy rear spring in it, just to kind of see what it does. I've run it with no bar before, but it has so much rear grip that it just overpowers the front. Now that was before I did the front end work on it, so it might actually work without a rear bar in this current configuration, because I do need more rear grip, so we might contemplate trying that again. So it has, the tires have rubbed inside the fender wells before because of the convertible. The inner fenders are not as rounded, they're a little flat on the top, so my tires tend to bump on there, especially having the lighter sway bar in it. So I have to deal with that. There's a few disadvantages of the convertible. Obviously the weight, this thing is, with me in it, it's 3,660 something pounds with me in it. It used to be 3,800, but I put the aluminum block engine in it, and that saved like 110 pounds. I gained a little bit of weight back after the accident because I put the flip-up lights back on it, but I lost some weight because this hood, you'll see, it's not double layered, which is not super high quality, but I'm gonna clean all this up on the edge and leave it not double layered and just sand all that on the inside to make it look prettier. So so the hood will be a lot lighter than the other one, which is a good place for it to be lighter up high. I do not run a tubular K member. A lot of people do for the weight, but that weight is actually in a good spot on the car. Being low helps with your center of gravity. So if you change that, it actually, you save weight, but you also change the center of gravity, so it actually affects it in a negative way. So there is that. You can see I do run full fender liners because it has the really good scrub radius. It does not rub any of the fender liners. It does rub on the, I noticed today on the inner fender or frame rail on the other side, it was rubbing the tire a little bit, but I never really feel that. So apparently I'm not, it's not rubbing a whole lot. The wheels, they're kind of cheap wheels. They're C606 replica wheels, or C7 Stingray wheels, my bad. 18 by 10 and a half, with the 56 millimeter offset all the way around. Like I said, no spacers on the front. 295 30 18 square. These are Falcon FK 510s, and then I run the new Bridgestone RE71 RSs, which seem to be working pretty good right now on it. So it does have, they are power mirrors. It is power locks. You can see the lock like way over there. Obviously it is power windows. We'll eventually have a radio back in it. Right now it doesn't, but I do drive it, so it's got to be drivable. It's got to be streetable. So it's kind of my kind of get on my soapbox with that. As far as being a street car in a street class, I kind of feel like I should drive it. You know, if it's going to be considered that. If it's not, then it should probably be in a different class. So I'm going to keep to that as long as I can. Maybe one day I'll change that, but I'm going to try and keep it this way as long as I can. So, 'cause it is fun to drive on the street, for sure. That's half the enjoyment. I said that before. So anyway, well, thanks for watching. I'm gonna have to re-lube everything now that I cleaned everything, so that's gonna be my next afternoon project after I eat some lunch. So I'll re-lube everything, put the tires back on it. I have a new tune to put in it. We're trying something with the throttle body to make it a little less sensitive. It was very sensitive last event, and they changed something late last year after my last event, and I just told them that didn't work. It's way too sensitive when I hit bumps and stuff, so we're going to try that today and see how that changes that. Aside from that, that's about it. So, well, hope everybody enjoyed that. If I forgot anything, I'll add it later. So thanks for watching.